Today I'm going to give you 6 reasons that atheism might be considered a mental illness. The first reason is that atheism is a flat-out denial of the real world around us. And what I mean by that is that there are 8 billion people on this planet in different cultures, in different religions, who have been historically recording unexplainable events for years and centuries and millennia on end, and atheists just flat out refuse to accept that information. Rather than taking information from the world around them and absorbing it into their understanding, they take a myopic, one-person experiential stance and they begin to impress it upon everyone else. And it's a rather grandiose concept and thinking and way of thinking to think that my understanding is so good that I understand what thousands, maybe tens of thousands and millions of people do not understand, and I understand it better. Is that not quite a grandiose type of thinking that might be a bit exaggerated? Second reason that I think that atheism might be considered by some to be a mental illness is it is a flat-out attempt to justify negative feelings. You know, when human beings do things that are bad, there are negative feelings that rise up in us. Now we know that, there are some that don't feel this way and they go out and commit mass and serial murders and we lock them up and we kill some of them as an example to the rest and say, hey, that is not the way you're supposed to live. But if we're talking about humanity in general, most of us realize that there is a right and wrong moral code established. But see, the atheist wants to logically, again, this is a grandiose mindset, they want to logically erase moral realism, and if I can erase that, then I will feel better about myself. And so they look to actually place this feeling of pain onto anybody who might have painted the picture for them that morals are real when in fact they're not. And so they want to blame parents or institutions or religion in general for creating a moral code that makes them feel bad. But it's funny that even though they can whitewash all that away, to get rid of feeling bad about doing wrong is a very hard thing to do unless you are perpetually doing wrong, which then really screws with your emotional capacities to understand, identify, empathize with other people, etc. And that's where a lot of other emotional and social tragedies begin to occur inside of that type of personality. But along with this, it really doesn't make logical sense to try to get rid of morality or morals as being because they're invisible and they're intangible and they're not really explainable. Because logic itself is unexplainable and invisible and intangible, and so it really doesn't make a lot of sense to I'm going to get rid of this unexplainable idea or concept with this unexplainable idea and reasoning process. That doesn't really compute. That's kind of illogical. So a third symptom of atheism that seems very prevalent is we all know what skepticism is, and skepticism is a very healthy tool for thinking. But skepticism is not supposed to be overused, and it sure shouldn't be used as a mindset, and I'll explain why. Skepticism is a tool to figure out if someone is lying to you. It is not actually a tool for finding truth. Because if you sharpen the blade of skepticism and you begin to cut on everything, you should eventually get to the truth, right? But what about when the truth is exposed and you still begin to cut and slice and jab and stab at it? Can you not injure your comprehension of the truth by being totally skeptical about it? So for instance, we know that skepticism can go too far in personal concern. Like when I begin to think about myself, I should say, well, should I use that type of language or should I not? But all of us know that being skeptical of the self should have limits, because those that do not limit how skeptical they are of themselves become insane, or could become insane. I don't know if I did that. I don't know if I did that or not. So for instance, setting the alarm clock. I know myself personally in the past. I'll set my alarm clock, and a few minutes later, did I set my alarm clock? Did I really set it? And I'll check it. Is it really set? And I might check it again. And I have those skeptical tendencies myself, but I have to put them at bay, or I will always be checking things, and I will always be washing my hands, and I will appear to have some kind of distortion inside of me that we classify as with the insane. So there has to be limits on skepticism. So skepticism is not a tool to find the truth, but it's just to expose liars, those that are fraudulently presenting the truth, or maybe those that are in error. You could be a little skeptical of that, but you can't be endlessly skeptical and get to the truth. You just come to more and more doubt. And that is kind of a weird scenario for a person to be in, that I'm an eternal skeptic. Basically, you're saying, I believe doubt, which is kind of illogical and kind of makes us wonder if there's not something wrong. So what about there being also a false sense of control in the atheist? You see, when you get into an argument with an atheist, one of the things that they always have up their sleeve that they can always use is they can doubt what you were saying. I doubt that. I don't see how that's significant. I don't see how that's relevant. I don't see how that applies, even though most human beings can make some of these connections, and some of them make all of the connections the same, when they're presented rationally, etc. But to one who wants to be a figure in control, and this makes sense, because if they really believe that everybody in the world who has ever experienced anything unexplainable, if I was there, I could have explained it, or me scientifically investigating, I could explain it. I could explain it in materialistic terms, period. That is a very grandiose position. And so why would a person that's that intellectually superior to everyone else, why would they not think that they should be in control of the conversation or the steering of this? And so one of the things they do is they control by skepticism. Oh yeah, well, what's your source? Can you cite that? What's your degree in? Oh, do these people confirm that with you? Have you tested this? And it is a false sense of control. Something else that is really odd about the atheistic mind is how biased it is. And so it seems like that skepticism, that overuse of skepticism, is only aimed in certain areas. Most of the time as a starting point, and you heard me right, a starting point, it's just aimed at religion in general. And so skepticism is used in religion, but it's not leveraged against science or academy or math or history or philosophy or things along those lines, because to be skeptical of those things, wouldn't that start tearing your life apart? And so you bring that out, and like I said, the beginning skeptic, you can say, well, hey, your bias is selective. But see, then that begins to eat on the person, because they want to be whole and complete and present a consistent, unified front. So then they become skeptical of everything, or try to become skeptical of everything. And if you become skeptical of everything and everyone around you, that's the same thing as being skeptical entirely of yourself, which could lead to insanity. Last but not least, one of the reasons that it could be considered some sort of sickness is that it absolutely, when you're focusing on this atheistic, agnostic, skeptical mindset, and you let it expand to be your belief system instead of a tool in your belief system, it actually drains the life out of things beautiful. It drains the life out of things meaningful. It drains the life out of art and music and love. And that's not quite human. And so let's say someone then was like, well, I'm going to apply it only to this areas of my life. I'm only going to apply it while I'm debating, but not to how I live, which is often the case. They'll have this belief system that they abide by some of the time, because you can't be skeptical all the time, because you would be insane. And then that creates this Jekyll and Hyde syndrome of critical, critical, critical. Okay, fun-loving, I enjoy life. Critical, critical, critical. Fun-loving, I enjoy life. Which kind of seems bipolar or multiple personality scenario. So is mental illness, or is atheism a mental illness? Why don't you make the decision?